The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
Can we normalize intimacy without commitment and that it's just Jesus? No.
Is it Abe Lincoln?
Yeah.
I'm not American, so I don't care.
Nice. Get him.
But I'm right about the Q stuff.
I know, but we still have forearms, so I don't think they didn't change much. General Kenobi.
All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Caleb. To my left is...
I'm Colton, and to my left,
I'm Joel, and to my left,
It's me, Caleb, again.
I don't think I've ever been to the left of Caleb before.
we mixed it up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, also, how do you have a three-person to your left? One of us is lying. Here's the... Right?
Or we're very meticulously organized to
What?
where we can all be the left of each other. We slope our shoulders in to make a triangle.
Okay. We turn a triangle into a circle.
Yes.
Jeez.
Sadly, we are missing Josh and Cole/Stewart. Joel, where
Yeah.
can people find episodes with them?
Okay, check out everything we're doing in the past and the present, and I guess in the future on secondratesaints.com. Yeah, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can use the chat feature there. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can use a buymeacoffee.com link, which is on there, or you could check us out at buymeacoffee.com/secondratesaints. If you'd like to send in a question, comment, or concern specifically for our 100th episode that we are preparing for, please email us at secondratesaints@gmail.com. We've loved some of the responses we've gotten so far, and we'd love to keep building a... it's going to be quite a hefty episode, actually. We're going to try and get through all your questions, so we'll see how this goes.
If you guys have gotten through 100 episodes, we'll get through all your questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to inspire some of those questions, like we're kind of an open book. Like anything you want to know about the podcast, other than like maybe our street address, we're good to dish out to the
Well, we
internet.
can answer
right?
that. We just might not give the right answer. You know?
Yeah, I'm gonna lie about it, but I think we've already done that.
Alcatraz Lane.
I don't think that's where Alcatraz is.
Yeah.
There's been a specific question that I haven't heard yet. That we've gotten a good amount of questions so far, but none of them have actually asked the question that I thought was going to be the first one asked. I want to see if someone can actually try to guess what that is.
Who is Stewart?
Dang it, you got it right.
Is that actually what it was? Who's Stuart? I feel like
Actually,
our
it's
longtime
not quite
listeners
that. It's not
know
quite that.
who Stu is, but
It's
I'll
me.
never tell.
I feel like if you pay attention, you'll know. Seeing how we're all illiterate and don't read, we don't really have a real what have we
Sure I
read.
do.
Well, if you call it reading, okay, we're gonna get into that a little bit.
Joel,
Absorbing.
what could you have read?
So this,
What could you have read?
I had an experience the other day. You see, I was walking through the park as I am, likely to do.
Yeah, stay
On a
exercise.
nice sunny, stay exercise.
Keep your girlish figure.
I'm, staying. Steve,
Your hourglass figure.
Carry on.
yeah, I was working on that, I guess. And I stumbled upon a bag that said "great idea" on it.
Great idea.
It said a great idea on it, and it looked like a little party bag, and inside it was a book called The Great Controversy. And I was with my wife, and she was like, that sounds familiar, because she had done a presentation on Seventh-day Adventism. And she's like, that sounds like a Seventh-day Adventist thing, because that's what they call basically the point in time that old other denominations became invalid, right?
When
It's-
do they say that?
When do they say that?
Yeah, do you know what the date or roughly it is? Is it Nicaea?
No, it's not nice. They have a whole thing where I believe it's in the 1700s. Christ began something called investigative judgment.
Yeah, because
It's part
his
of their
ascension
theology.
finally, he reached heaven.
Yeah.
Finally. So he'd been ascending
Yeah.
to heaven through space. I don't know.
I
It doesn't
see.
matter.
Heaven's real far. Apparently.
Takes a while to get there.
Yeah,
A few
you know,
so
years.
he descending, and
Just
then he
imagine how
finally,
far up is.
he finally got there. Is that where you reach the final
Yeah.
y-axis or whatever
Went
in
north.
Minecraft?
in Minecraft.
Yeah, dude got to the world border.
No, so it's Jesus ascending. He finally reaches heaven, and then he does his heavenly ministry, which is investigative judgment, which is just works-based salvation from then on.
And
Nice.
yeah, that's the thing. It is work-based salvation. It's that Christ is currently in heaven judging. Like that judgment is not something that'll necessarily happen at the end of days, although it will happen at the end of days as well. But right now, it's like
Right, like kingdom is in session kind of thing.
I will preface
Interesting.
that
book.
not all Seventh-day Adventists are heretics.
Is
but
that
those
true?
who know their own theology are.
Is that true?
So it all boils down to Ellen G. White, who's like their prophet. They call her a prophet, which is a result of, I would say, more head trauma than Holy Spirit utterances, because she
Oh,
had severe head trauma. We might need to clip that.
No,
actually.
it's funny
It's
and true.
It's funny and true. It is a historical fact that she suffered a significant amount of head trauma. It's also a historical fact that she is the most not maybe you can't say published, but most prolific female author ever.
Oh,
She has written the most of any female author. Now, to be fair, I think she had a 5th grade education, so most of it's almost unreadable. But she did have multiple revelations, we'll say. And you can see this in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that they're trying to kind of distance themselves from Ellen G. White while still adhering to a lot of her teachings. So I found this book, The Great Controversy, right? And a lot of it has like, I don't understand how it works. I read a little bit of it, but it was, I think, pretty incoherent. But they refer to her exclusively as the author. They don't talk about Ellen G. White. They call her the author in her books. So if you find a book that is a Christian book and doesn't have an author's name, you should be very suspicious. So if you look, I think it was one of the subtexts.
the Bible.
I was going to say, some of the books of the Bible kind of don't say what they're...
No, but that's not what...
I know that's not what you're
I
saying.
mean, in modern publishing.
Oh, okay.
Right? Also, if somebody
like
will
when you
give you a
get
book and just won't tell you who it's by, it's weird.
Is that like
Especially
when you get a signed copy of the Bible?
That would be kind of awesome. I wonder if it'd be worth more. Guaranteed it, right?
I have also been handed books that they won't tell me who the author is or anything about them. They're like, you should read this. This explained a lot about like how I see Christianity, changed my worldview. I was like, that sounds awesome. I'm going to read that right away. I trust you. You're a good person. Bam. Lies We Believe About God by William Paul Young.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, here's the thing: is that you can't just blindly accept teachers. It's a
Yeah.
terrible. Look into any of Ellen G. White's teachings. Like most of them are health related. Like she was closer to a dietitian, not well trained or knowing anything about diets, but that was a big thing for her. Like diet is a huge part of Seventh-day Adventism. Like that's why they can't do the caffeine thing, or some of them don't. It's kind of relaxed on that.
many in the Seventh-day Adventist community are trying to move away from that and
Of
try
course.
to be essentially just be evangelicals that meet on Saturday.
Well, that's what they're becoming, and that's what they would like to be. Like there's a collection of evangelists in the States. I can't remember what they're called, but it's basically the Committee for Recognizing Evangelist Denominations. And the Seventh-day Adventists are currently going through the process of trying to be recognized as one of them.
Yeah.
So
and
the
I think that
heresyizing or whatever
Yeah.
you say.
I think that if you have a prophet that you all believe as a denomination,
Yeah.
you are kind of ineligible for that because there
Yeah.
is a notable addition. I
Like
would say
Billy
the same
Graham,
thing.
right?
Billy Graham.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Okay.
kidding.
Well, we can get into Office of Prophet stuff, I guess. I think we've already talked about that a little bit on the pod, but that's where we're at.
In
But
our Acts
I would say the same thing about like William Branham, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of we'll say I believe Seventh-day Adventism was a Methodist offshoot, if I'm remembering correctly.
Or something to do with the Quakers or something. It might have to do with the Quakers and Shakers within the... When was it? 1700s? Or later?
I think it was a bit later than that. I think it was 1800s that she was around.
Oh, so then it's
Mm.
way past the Quakers and Shakers.
Really?
Quakers would be around, but
thought-
Quakers and
I
Shakers
wish I had gotten the
right,
dates on it,
are
but
the
they're
whole,
still
like,
distributing the
ranged
works.
during the English Commonwealth. That's
Right.
when, like, during the English Commonwealth, like, so many heretical groups popped up. It was insane.
Yeah, but most of them fled to the U.S.
Most of them just conglomerated into Quakers.
Yeah. That too.
So not until after that. So my rant means nothing.
Fair enough. So the reason I took the book, and it was kind of a question of like, is this for somebody? Like, is this for me to take, or is this somebody left a
Right.
book on a park bench and forgot it? And I think that it's a tract.
Like they left it there on purpose for you to find.
Yeah, because in the book, and not as like a bookmark or anything, there was another tract, right? Like there was and for those who aren't familiar with what a tract is, it's basically a little pamphlet explaining the gospel in short.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
like
kind
a
of
creed, but you give to people, right?
it's less like a creed and more like a advertisement. I feel like.
Okay.
An infomercial.
Yeah, like lots of heretical groups will have them. I think they're actually more common in heretical groups.
I don't know.
Just
I don't
because
think that's true.
they're just such an effective way to spread, I would say, slogans and catchphrases and like
That's true.
little
ideas,
mantras and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're well supported. Like here's an example of one. It's almost like the form factor allows under-explained ideas. Like there was one on Daniel and Revelation. These books are both apocalyptic literature. They explain things in terms used throughout Scripture. Like, oh, great, they're doing fine so far. And they said, these will always have to do with future happenings.
Well, I think it.
And so what
it
they'll
made
do,
a genre claim, though, didn't it?
It did.
Said it used these are genres popular in the times of Daniel and Revelation. It's like, okay, first off, it's hundreds of years.
Yeah, very different times.
Is that claim is quasi true, but then it does, which have to do with which have to do with future tellings or prophetic future tellings, which is, well, as a genre, no.
Yeah.
You can say some parts of those books, or you could even make an argument that some of all of those books, but as a genre, which is the claim you're making, that's wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And because they're such a short factor, you can put convincing material and then kind of a little spoon of lies in there. And that's why it's so popular with, I would say, less reputable theologians.
Well, tracts have been huge in Christian history since the Gutenberg press.
Yeah.
Like tracts have made were the way of passing information and knowledge and social movements and all that kind of stuff.
If anything, Luther was the tract originator.
Yeah. Like
that was how the
that's one of them.
Reformation happened.
Yep.
Was because he was able to spread ideas so quickly that the organization of the church could not stop them before they spread. They couldn't stop you from preaching. They couldn't stop you because who cares if you stop preaching? They have a pamphlet that they brought home, and they could be giving that to any one of their friends.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's thousands of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's then been like a common practice throughout Protestantism to have tracts.
And it's worth pointing out, though, that those tracts and those tracts in like the 1800s, because you have like the tracts of the times in like England and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are essays. Those are closer to what we would call journals.
Right.
They wouldn't have photos and whatever. And yeah, those are
doves covering them.
Yeah.
So then let's bring this into a little bit of an experiential thing. What's your favorite tract you've ever seen? Good or bad? Like it can be like the worst one or the best one.
I remember
I've never seen one with good graphic design, unfortunately.
That's true.
My family and I lived in northern Manitoba. Okay. And we lived beside a fundamentalist Baptist church, like very fundamentalist. Like he's a missionary from southern United States. They were fine. Whatever. I was friends with the pastor's son who was like super insular or whatever, right? Like very protected. And on Halloween, which they did not celebrate, but they handed out tracts, right?
Yep. I've heard of, I've had that happen.
Yeah. And so I just hung out with him. I didn't hand out tracts, but I was just there because, his parents are making him do dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And
they're for sure they're like, why Halloween is wrong and you're a pagan.
There was the two. Those are the two that I remembered, which was turn and burn. I don't even remember really much about it other than it was just that.
Yeah.
And then Halloween is devil worship, and they used to sacrifice people during Halloween. That was the tracks.
Yeah. And and like the response has got to be, well, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm dressed up as Wonder Woman.
yeah, right.
But again, we talked about it in our sin episode. It's the fundamentalist belief that sin can be given to you subtly.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Without your knowledge.
Without your
kind of
knowledge
thing.
or acceptance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's more complicated than that, fundamentalist, please. Don't overcomplicate things by simplifying them.
But
True.
How I guess we've kind of blurred into our main topics of
Yep.
this is a third episode. How does
No, we got to continue with that.
Okay.
Colton, have you ever seen a good tract?
have I ever seen a good tract?
Yeah, sorry.
Here's the problem. Tracks, at least all of the ones that I remember,
Mm-hmm.
if not all the ones I've ever seen, I said they all have bad graphical design. That's sort of on purpose. They'll have bold fonts, bright colors, different changing colors all over them, weird pictures, different types of pictures on them, stuff like that. Because the idea is that it's less so supposed to give you some information through it, more so than to catch your attention.
Yes.
Because it's supposed to make you go, oh, look at this. I'm in the brown room. Look at there's that one with yellow and pink text.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what does that say? That's crazy. Pick it up, read it. You might not even care what's on it.
Mhm.
The idea behind it is that you have now read it, you have picked it up, and that is the point of the tract in their eyes. Which is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Mhm.
I don't know. But the idea is less so about the actual content of the thing itself and more so trying to get your attention. So I think, no, I've not seen a good tract.
So here's the best tract, and then I'm going to contrast that with the worst. Okay, the best tract I've thought of. There was a preacher that I was listening to when I was a teenager or something like that. I don't remember how long ago it was, but he talked about how his mother was, I believe, was on the verge of suicide, and when she had made that decision that she was going, and it was a really hardcore sermon. Like this guy was like being a little, I would say a little bit too raw almost, but like it was tough. And he talked about how basically his mother had made a suicide pact with herself and her children,
Jeez.
and that was what she was going to carry through. Maybe this is too intense for the podcast. If
That's
it is,
fine.
we can
Carry
call
on.
it
No,
out.
we're good.
That's where we're at. And for some reason, somebody showed up at their door, knocked on their door, and handed the tract to a church service that was happening that night. Right? So it was an invitation, but it was also information, you know? And basically it was just the message, you are loved by the church. And that was what the tract was. It wasn't so much about doctrine, but it was more about invitation into the body of Christ, which I think is the right way to do it. Right? That is still technically a tract.
Yep.
Fair
It
enough.
does fit the categories of the tract. Okay? And that's touching and insane to even think about. I've thought about it a lot when talking about tracts. But on the flip side of that, if you talk to anyone who has been a waitress or a waiter
Mm-hmm.
and the Sunday afternoon rush, and they get a bill that looks like a piece of legal tender, and then they pick it up and it says, the $1 million question, have you accepted Christ? And the Christian just skipped out on the tip.
Yeah, they gave them a tip, don't you know?
Yeah, the $1 million question, have you accepted Christ? I think that's tasteless. Because it's putting the other person at a disadvantage and then kind of just putting them in an awkward situation. You know,
I think all it does is make them mad at you.
right? Like that's a terrible way to witness because you're witnessing by saying, I'm not going to tip you.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It's just weird. And we don't have to get into like tip etiquette or whatever, but just
Don't tip at all. No, I'm just kidding.
like, I don't love the idea of evangelism at any cost, even at the cost of being, I would say, ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I think that there is always a way to tastefully portray the gospel.
I don't think you should give the gospel in an underhanded way.
I agree.
Yeah, I think doing that is
Yeah.
somewhat deceptive.
Present the gospel in such a way that it is recepted, that it can be received positively. But in the words of Paul, oh, what did he say? What book is this? I don't remember. But
The
it's
Bible.
we have not put any stumbling block in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't make it more difficult.
Yeah.
That being said, in the same tone,
Hmm.
Don't water it down.
it's the wisdom of God is like it's foolishness to the Gentiles, a stumbling block to the
Yeah.
Jews,
Mm-hmm.
and don't like as Paul did, that we didn't come and preach the gospel with fancy terms and words and blah blah blah.
Came with you without wisdom.
Yeah, we came like preach it humbly, but don't put stumbling blocks in front. Know your audience. And now in some places to preach the gospel, you can say, well, how is there a way to tastefully put you live in sin?
Mm-hmm.
If that's like where the conversation goes and that's what it's at,
Yeah.
then you do it.
Yeah. But at the same time, walk in the Spirit and know when that's your place to do that. Right? Because stories where that's like guaranteed, that guy who showed up to the door with a tract, that wasn't an accident, right? Like, I don't know if he was listening to the Lord's, direction or what, but.
And he could have been one of those crazy guys that does the tip thing. But does God use people like that sometimes? Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, but only out of his grace do crazy people and people that don't present the gospel very well, such as ourselves.
Yeah.
By grace, both of those people can be used by God.
Yeah.
Well, we've jumped around it a little bit, but it's kind of part of the episode is are tracts a good form of evangelism?
Yeah, that is the TERT question.
Yeah,
Thoughts in
turtle
real time question. I guess I forgot to introduce it. That's our episode for today. It's Thoughts in Real Time. Well, we kind of front-loaded that tract one.
What do you think?
I think that there have been uses for tracts maybe in the past and maybe there are in the future, but we've done such bad PR for them that it's very difficult to trust that the message is going to be conveyed through that medium properly.
Yes, Caleb?
So, I agree. Contextually, I don't think right now, cultural contextually, they don't do well.
Okay.
However, the modern version of tracts, I think, like 'em or hate 'em,
YouTube videos
are just weird Jesus edits in short form.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
What?
It's just Christian propaganda made by a 13-year-old that's like way cooler than most others.
Yeah.
put on like random meme sites.
Yeah, well, kind of some of it. Yeah, where it's just where you have like the whole, somebody, can we make, can we normalize intimacy without commitment? And then it's just Jesus. No.
And then it's like a cool edit with like super bass and
Yeah,
whatever.
it's
got
weird.
glasses on him and stuff.
And it's super
So cool.
weird.
Yeah.
But it's like, that is the modern form of it.
Yeah.
These are the gospel truths.
Mhm.
This is the life that Christ calls to.
Yeah.
And
Do you think that people putting Bible verses on Instagram or Facebook is the equivalent as well?
less so, but yeah. It's a modern version.
So I don't know if-
We're getting further and further from like what is tracts.
Yeah.
But like, you'd have to define what is like the essence of a tract, and then
They're just Christian propaganda, which is not bad. Not in the negative sense of propaganda, but that is what it is.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right? Like they're just the fastest way in the past of delineating information. I do like the idea of like TikToks and Instagram posts being
modern
the
tracts.
new track.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, it almost puts an onus on the church to like, no, you have to put something out.
Yeah.
Like you should.
Hire a 13-year-old to make hard Jesus edits.
That's awesome. I would love to do that. If we got someone in the audience that can make Jesus edits for us, do that. I would love to see one of those. Okay.
Do you?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I don't know how well this Jesus edits works, but I think they're way better than
They
modern
work on
tracts.
me. I get
yeah.
saved every time I come across one.
I know
The
that
Armenian.
there are still places in the world that tracts are pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially closed off countries to Christianity tends to work pretty well. Like, China.
Yeah. Where literature is still suppressed, they work rather
Yep.
well. But currently in the West, modern, I don't think it's very good.
I'm interested to see what people will say about that because I have a pretty negative view of tracks.
I
just
also
from
have
my
a
own
pretty negative
experience,
view.
But then there's every once in a while there's that story and it's like, oh, it only had to work once. Hey.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Right? Like-
it's kind of like street preaching where someone's
Yeah.
just on a soapbox and they're just preaching like hellfire and brimstone. And you're like, how good is that?
Yeah.
And then somebody's like, hey, that's how I got saved. And it's like, that's awesome. I rejoice.
Yeah.
Well, in
On
our
the flip side, how many people were galvanized in their rejection.
Well, us three were there, even though maybe we don't all remember it. But in our first year of Bible college, that was one of the questions going around: is street preaching a valid form of evangelism?
Mm.
And we're Pentecostal college,
Yeah.
and they have to say yes.
I think,
But then do we agree with that?
yeah, I think it can be, and I would even think that maybe in many cultures it is, but I don't know about here in the West.
I don't know. I've changed
and
my
it depends
opinion
on
this
how
a few
well
times.
it's done,
That's true.
right? Because the stereotype of street preaching is just hellfire and brimstone
Yes,
from a
yelling at
soapbox. It's
someone.
just
Yeah.
But then there's that older guy that goes
Cliff
something that's
Yeah.
like talking to all these university kids.
So
he just
good.
stands in a circle and people just yell stuff at him, and then he just yells stuff back. It's so good.
Yeah.
He does a good job. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one of my answers back then was preaching hellfire and brimstone, no matter how many people's it saved, is turning away like 10 others or whatever.
You still stand by that?
I don't know. I think my instincts tell me yes, but I don't know if I can consciously say that's true.
Because there are some people, especially in the modern day, they'll just be like, "Oh, you think some people deserve to be punished for their rejection? You're bad. I don't have anything to do with it." It's like, what do you mean? Of course, I believe in some form of judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 90% of apologetics sites that I've been on and stuff to talk to people about it. I don't go to sites to talk to apologetics people. You know what I mean? Almost always the moral monster idea is brought up.
Yeah.
And this is the
Well, it's
this
a
is
big
the
one
point.
that even if you look at William Lane Craig, who's like one of the biggest voices in apologetics, that's his big thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like he goes against the moral monster argument more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
I don't even think it's because he wants to. Like he has some scientific arguments that he seems to enjoy more, but he just always seems to have to make the moral argument.
Well, it's an undying one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is partly fair. And also, I think, a consequence of this hellfire and brimstone preaching, the kingdom is coming now in our generation kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it also, the hellfire and brimstone preaching is very emotive, and everybody easily understands the problems with it. And so everyone feels as though, oh, my aunt is like this. So, and then that's immediately, it's, I think it plays into whether or not it's properly experienced by the majority. I think it plays into a socially conceived idea that is shared across many atheistic Westerners. Right? Of what the church is and what Christians are like. And it plays into that very well.
Yeah.
I think my answer to whether or not we should preach on street corners, or especially to do hellfire brimstone preaching to people, is it depends on the context, which is unfortunate because that's not real. That's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
Not really a real answer. It's, hey, it can be sometimes, maybe, hopefully. But I think there are some people who need that, some people who don't. Preaching on a corner, even in the West, sometimes does help. Sometimes it only hurts.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's case by case, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be a little bit tapped into public discourse. You can't just, right? Like, we say this almost ironically because the podcast could be considered a tract, because we're just sitting here talking about God,
Fair enough.
right? But it is somewhere, it's almost like preaching on the street corner that is currently acceptable. It's kind of
I wouldn't classify it the same.
podcasts are the place for controversial talks.
Yeah, but they aren't public spaces. You
I
have
would
to
argue anything on the internet is a public
I know,
space.
but you consent to the ideas by tuning in.
That's true.
Whereas in a public corner, the idea is that's forced upon you, and that's the argument against it.
I mean, the hour of power, man, that was the first fire and brimstone preaching, right? And that was
That's true.
one of the first audio clips uploaded to the internet.
Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yeah.
That's the first hell. It's not the first, but it's the most memorable for me.
Yeah.
It's such a great sermon. I don't care what anybody says about it. You should go read Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God.
don't
Is
know
it
what
Jonathan
this is.
Edwards? Oh, no. Or is it?
I don't know what this is.
Oh, no.
I don't
Either
remember
way,
his name, but-
it's part of the Great Awakening.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool. Well, we can move on from tracks then, but yeah, drop us a comment. Let me know what You think of tracts, if they're effective, not effective. Should we be doing street preaching? Is this street preaching that we're doing now? I really don't know.
Should second-rate saints have official tracks? Anyway, next question.
Yes.
I would love that. That would be very fun. But it would be more advertising the podcast than anything. So that's not
Why you
quite
should
fair.
tune in.
Let's see. My grandmother gave me a Bible today. I've never read one. Any recommendations on how to read or where to start? I want to educate myself.
I'm glad you're finally picking up Bibles, Joel.
Thank you. No, that's a question from the internet. I guess I should preface that a little bit. But yeah, if you got your first Bible, where would you start? So let's rephrase this question a little bit to make it a little more fun. Caleb, if you were to be given a Bible today, where would you start?
Genesis.
Genesis. Well, yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
Just at the beginning, you'd want to start at Genesis.
Which book of the Bible should be given with if you don't really know anything?
If I didn't know?
Yes, if you had to read the Bible for the first time again,
Knowing what I know?
Knowing what you know now, where would you want to start?
Knowing what I know now.
The question's a little convoluted, I'll admit.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I want to have fun with
Are you
it.
saying which book of the Bible I would want to read right now?
No, if you knew everything that you do know now,
Oh,
but you've never read the Bible,
okay.
where would you start?
Fine, I made a bad question. I'm sorry.
No, that's more.
What?
Yeah,
Where should
I
he
get it.
start? Where should the guy start?
Honestly, I think it would be the same answer if I knew everything or if somebody walked up to me in the street and asked me this question. John.
John? I agree.
John's metaphors and imagery and the personal dialogue of Christ with the other people,
Yeah.
the other, like Nicodemus and whatnot.
Mhm.
It's and the high priestly discourse. It's beautiful, and the metaphors, you get a lot of them, but they only get richer and richer the more you know about the Bible.
Mm.
And you see more and more and more and more. But
Mhm.
you do get them your first read. You do get many of them first read.
Yeah.
Right? Like I am the way, the truth, and the life, or I am the light of the world. And you're like, oh, I understand what light of the world means. And then you're like, oh, but that's at like the Festival of Lights and the cleansing of the temple and all that. And it's like, oh, so that's so much more.
Yeah.
But you do get an aspect of it at the first reading, right?
Yeah.
It would be John.
Cool.
What would be the second then?
Romans.
Interesting.
Saw that one coming. To be honest with you.
Yeah. Those are actually
I think
the
mine's
order
different.
in which most translators,
Mhm.
if they're going to put out certain books first,
Yeah.
that's the order in which most translators will go first.
Cool.
John, then Romans, then Luke, Acts
Interesting.
normally. Then
Yeah.
How about you, Joel?
I think I would just tell him to start right at the beginning of the New Testament and then give a brief kind of description of what each of what to look for. Because the biggest problem for me whenever somebody starts reading the Bible is, do you know what you're reading? Right? Because letters between some guy named Paul and wherever Galatians is, or the town in Galatia, you don't know that. You don't know that's why it's called Galatians, especially not if you're like not a historical guy at all.
Right.
So I'd, just give a bit of a preface. Hey, you're going to be reading 4 accounts of Christ's life, and then you're going to be looking at the history of the church, right, or the beginning of the church, and then you're going to be looking at the magnum opus of theology. I know it's not technically that, but Romans, and then just tell them to read it as placed in the Bible, and just say, hey, the order's not even that important. Like they're organized by length of letter. It's like, yeah.
I think both of you guys have really good arguments. I agree.
I just think there should be a basic understanding of genre and structure before you even set out.
Especially with
Right.
some of those, when you get to some of the later books. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Colton's going to say Song of Psalms.
It's Song of Songs. No.
Oh, yeah.
It's
dude.
Ecclesiastes. No.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes is my favorite book for those who don't know. But it's definitely not the one I'd recommend first.
You must be fun at parties.
No.
No, I'm not.
No.
If I had to give an order,
Vanity.
if I could guarantee it, okay. I would recommend one of the synoptics first. I think
Yeah.
Luke.
Okay.
Probably. Just because I think it gives both the most comprehensive and directed argument, that where Mark gives a very directed argument, it's short, and Matthew does, but it has a lot of prophecies and stuff that won't be easily understood. Luke does too, but less so, I think. Then I would go John, because I think that with an understanding of the full, of like more systematic approaches to the history of it, then having a more in-depth view of it, of the gospel emotionally, I think would benefit as well.
Okay.
Then I would go Romans. Then I'd go Acts.
Okay.
Can I think.
Can I ask
Then I
you
would go
guys-
the rest of the gospel.
Can I ask you guys a quick question?
Whatever.
Pseudo related to this.
Epistles.
If you are trapped on an island with 2 books of the Bible,
The Bible and the Apocrypha.
what would they be? Because my answer is the same.
Okay.
John and Romans.
2 books of the Bible, and that's all I get.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. Psalms is a sleeper one, though. Not going to lie.
That's true.
If it's you-
Jude.
Yeah, it's just super small. Psalms is a sleeper one. To have
Psalms
Psalms
would be
Yeah.
right?
But then you get into like, what about Proverbs?
Oh, Psalms is so much better than Proverbs.
No, I know, but like then you can
You're on the island, dude. What are you going to use Proverbs for?
wisdom, you know.
Wisdom.
live your
Yeah,
life.
but you're like,
Don't go into that street corner. I can't go in any street corner.
You know what? That's a good point.
if you're
I didn't
alone
think
on an
about that.
island, how do you don't need to learn how to raise your sons in ways of wisdom,
You don't know.
right? You need to know that God is directing your footsteps, which is Psalms.
But you're not going anywhere, so why do you need footsteps?
That's true.
Well, it's just that God meant for you to be there. It's going to be comforting. It's not going to be like, hey, the wicked men get no money. That's Proverbs.
That's not
wicked men get no money.
I heard that
that's the
somewhere.
argument.
I don't think that's it.
1-1.
Yeah, not really fair.
Joel
to-
1:1 though. That's a different book. Okay, yeah, Psalms is a good. Ah, shoot.
I don't know. Here, it's not mine, but I can totally see it.
Can I do Luke Acts? Is that fair?
That's fine.
Oh, I'm allowed both.
Luke Acts is boring.
Oh, as one thing?
Yeah.
No,
But they're part of the same manuscript.
they're not though.
They're
They're
not.
specifically not.
I know. It's like a sequel. It's part of the same story. So
First and Second Samuel.
Just come back and you're a Jew. I'll find you.
Leviticus and Deuteronomy.
Oh.
That would be pretty good.
That would be good.
Like,
I
take
would
the Torah.
the
that
Torah.
That count as a book.
That's 5 books.
You don't have to answer the
count?
question if you
5
don't
and a
want
half
to.
books.
Fine, I'll take the Psalms and Isaiah.
Okay.
Really?
Yep.
That way
Still
you
gets a little bit Christological in there.
Sick.
And more interesting.
finally have enough time to figure out what's going on in Isaiah.
That's a big one, actually.
I
I
might
don't
be-
understand it.
I think you've convinced me with the Psalms thing. I think it would be Psalms and probably John.
Okay.
Psalms and John. Psalms.
Here's my other question, and it's related to the last one, to the last bit of that question.
Sure.
What book would you recommend about learning the Bible to help the person understand their Bible the first time through?
Well, I know somewhere I'd go if I wanted to rank all the books in the Bible.
No.
I think I would go to secondratesaints.com.
That was my joke.
I would say pick up a survey of either the old or the new, but
Yeah.
a light survey. There are many surveys of like Survey of the Old Testament or
Mhm.
Survey of the New Testament. Some are headier than others. Find one that matches what you're wanting to do for reading length.
Mhm.
And if it's your first time through, find one that's matching the level of content that you want to go through.
Yeah.
You don't want to pick up an 800-page survey of the New Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you asking which books that to accompany the Bible we would choose?
Yeah, or if you want to go with like a life application, study Bible or something like that.
Yeah.
Find a study Bible. That might be a good
Yeah.
answer too.
Yeah.
Well,
any
that's what study
Bible would be
Bibles are for, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of their intention.
Because the
studying
last
the
bit of
Bible,
their
yeah.
question was, I want to educate myself.
I want to educate myself, yeah. And honestly, if you find an 800-page survey and you just brute force that and read all the way through it, you're going to be able to have a lot deeper conversations about the Bible than most people you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, finding any book that's a biblical theology on
A biblical theology? Probably don't start with a biblical theology.
well, the only reason I'd say that is because then you'd be able to see arguments that carry forth from older books that connect older stories to newer stories to show the depth of whatever that book is talking
He
about.
would just become a biblical theologian, I guess.
Yeah.
Typology by James M.
Typology would be
Hamilton.
good.
Oh, you think so?
That would be a good. If you take Colton's answer, that'd be the way.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I was thinking like even Schreiner. Schreiner's what's that book called?
He
Shoot.
writes many.
But
The King and His Beauty.
King is Beauty.
Yeah.
Is a good example of what I'm trying to say.
I mean, that would get you very familiarized with the narrative of the whole Bible.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you
I
want
think it
to.
would make you very curious about the rest
Fair enough.
and also connect things that you would not be able to connect yourself.
Okay, let's do a fun one. These are bad.
Uh-oh.
Um,
I like that face.
I'm not convinced this is even. Anyways, whatever. I heard that Jesus' last name was not Christ. Is that true? If not, was Joseph last name or Mary last name Christ? Okay, I don't
That's
think
one
this
of
is
the
a
questions
real.
on here.
That's one of the questions I found, and I liked it a lot.
Well, you see, the newer translations removed Christ from.
Mm.
They're removing Jesus' last name, and that's why the
Ah.
King James Bible is the best. Everybody.
His last name's Chris.
Because they just added the word Christ in there whenever they wanted to be super clear about which Jesus they were talking about. Which is fair because Jesus ben Sirach was still in the King James Bible when that was translated. That's
last
not the reason.
His last name was Chris.
What's his middle name?
Jesus
I just
Christ.
added a T later on.
Have you heard people say Jesus H Christ? Do you think that's
Yes.
Yeah, and that's just ha, which is just the.
Is that really what it
That's
is?
the joke,
I thought it was Hosanna or something.
isn't it?
I don't know.
I've heard that.
Okay.
I think I heard that from our Hebrew prof.
Oh,
Funny guy. Anyways, that question is wild.
But
I hope
Christ
someone
isn't
asks you that.
Hebrew.
What?
Christ isn't Hebrew though. So why'd you ha, which is
Yeah, it would be.
is it
I don't know.
ha Hebrew?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm not
It
confused.
is, yeah. Okay.
yes.
It wouldn't be a thoughts in real
It's
time
also
if we didn't.
logos.
Uh-oh. Maybe I'm the dum dum.
I think that if our prof listens to this,
He's going to be so sorely
He's gonna
disappointed.
He's not gonna- revoke our
He's not gonna listen
education.
to this.
he'll be like, yeah, okay.
Revoke our
It would-
education. You have
You've
been,
been un-
unbibled.
You have been uneducated.
Man, if he gives me all my money back, I'll take it.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
I'll ask for it back if anything. Okay. This was the top comment on that question. It is Jesus the Christ. A lot of people were named Jesus, but only one Jesus the Christ. And to be more fully associate which Jesus he is Son of Mary.
I think it's not.
Thank you. So basically,
So that's his middle name? Like Jesus H. Christ?
it's a capitalized T.
That's true.
Like it's, anyways.
Why is
These
he called
guys
the
are-
Christ?
Why is he called the Christ? Christos.
What'd you call me?
Or Messiah. Mashiach.
Mashiach.
Yeah.
Which I think is cooler, but
Which means
that would put me in the
savior.
same category as people who are like Yeshua, and they believe his name wasn't really Jesus.
If you don't pray in Jesus' name, if you have to pray saying
In Yeshua?
Yeshua at the end of your name, at the end of your prayer, otherwise it doesn't count.
yeah,
I've heard
fair
that
enough.
argument.
Like wrong mailing address. Like what's going on here? It's not even the same language he spoke.
I think the Bible
Anyways.
says stuff about that.
Yeah.
Either way, I think that's a funny question.
Yeah. I wish it was okay. There's. Do we want to do another funny one or serious one? We'll do
Whatever
serious
you
one.
want.
We'll do serious one. It's sort of serious. Is Eve taken out of Adam's rib or side? I've seen rather convincing arguments that the Hebrew word commonly translated as rib should actually be rendered as side, and wondered if this interpretation has any credibility amongst scholars. So, if you look at some older
Let's say that.
portraits of a pre-deribbed Adam,
Oh, the rebus?
Rebus.
The philosophical combining of,
Yes, that's what I'm
Yes.
talking about.
okay.
Where you have like that it wasn't as much removed as separated from,
Mm.
that Adam was in some sense fully Eve and fully Adam.
Yep.
Which is
Both genders together.
Both
the
genders
ancient
together,
Greek
which
idea.
looks about as weird as you would expect. Kind of a
Androgynous.
I don't think it was androgynous. I think
No,
there was
I'm
like
just kidding.
actually like
Yeah, 4 limbs.
on the side of him he had 4 legs and 4 arms, and it was just a monster. But yeah, that's an earlier. So there's
Too
always been the
powerful
consensus that
that God
maybe it's
separated them.
side. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the ancient Greek idea.
Too powerful.
That the gods were jealous of humans and they thought they could rival their own power. And so that humans used to be one, men and women as one.
Yeah, imagine how fast we could run with 4 legs.
Unbelievable.
No, they're right.
I know, but we still have 4 arms, so they didn't change much. General Kenobi.
It's like an off-brand. It's like generic Grievous instead of general.
Disappointed.
Yeah. Generic.
General disappointed. But the gods separated them because they thought they would be too powerful, and the alchemic rebus is the idea of joining those two back together.
The scroll is giving him power.
So here's the
Adam.
question: Is Eve a side of ribs?
Okay.
But if Adam means earth, does that mean that half of the earth was separated to create the sky, and that's what it's talking about?
Yeah, that's more Tiamat than anything else.
We get into this a bit in our creation series.
We do.
Yes.
Now, that being said, our creation series is
Good.
recorded. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Sadly, and I would like to recommend you guys to go listen to that. Sadly, it is recorded before we got our nice recording equipment.
It has audio quality of garbage.
Yeah.
It
but
kind of sounds like we're yelling at you from across a parking lot.
Here's the thing. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard. It's not like we're recording through snowball mics, but there's been definitely a jump.
It was
I
like
think we
close,
did
though.
have a snowball mic though,
At one
didn't we?
point, yeah.
Okay.
We did. That's true.
So that's not quite fair. Anyways, Eve. So do you think this is an explanation for why men have one less rib than women?
That's been preached in pulpits.
I've heard
so
it
many times.
Bible
Isn't that
college.
insane? That we're just like, oh, the Bible says it, so it's true. No need to check.
Yeah.
And it's like easily verifiable. Hey, men don't have less ribs than women.
How else to get doctors and nurses in your congregation to go, oh, you just straight up don't care.
Yeah. You are only preaching rhetoric. You only want to make your point, and you do not care what falls to the wayside.
Yeah. Unfortunately, also the idea that men have one less rib than women is just an old wives' tale. I don't know. I know where it comes from. It comes from the Bible, but at least that's the idea.
Mhm.
But in one of my Bible classes at school, someone asked our prof why men have one less rib, and they said, "I don't know. I think it's a genetic thing." When it's I know.
Obviously a genetic thing.
Well, I can't blame them. Men do not have less ribs than women.
Yeah.
It's not true.
I know who you're talking about, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's not within the realm of knowledge. Like I can't blame them that much for not knowing. At the same time, it's
Sad.
so it's a weird amount of people that don't know this, considering how common the belief is. Right?
It becomes the problem of over specialized theology, where
Think so?
you get this headspace where you know everything about one thing, right?
Yep.
And then you actually lose the ability to kind of fact check yourself by not understanding other fields.
Yeah.
And like the good profs that I know, like they're more multifaceted. They have degrees in science.
But they may not be able to change your oil,
Yeah.
sure.
right? And so it's like there's things that are just
Or change your ribs.
or do drywall or
Yeah.
so it's like we live in a hyper specialized society.
Or run 100 meters.
Yeah, what you see as smart people is just specialized people. They're not necessarily more useful,
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
You ask them a question about biology that has to however you say that word, relates to the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a fair question, but also I think the easiest one is that men do not have less ribs than women.
Here's a question for you then, because also the Bible doesn't presuppose then that all men following Adam have one less rib.
No.
But anyway,
It's not a reinforced fact.
So that's why all
even-
men want to
even
eat
if-
ribs. They want it back.
yeah. Well, here's my question. Assuming that Adam and Eve are real,
Okay.
Bold
You
assumption.
front loaded a lot of stuff there.
I did, and real as in not mythically depicted in the Bible, but
Right. Actual people.
yeah, as from the plain reading of Scripture.
Mm.
not like an airplane, Joel.
Oh,
no.
sure. Sorry.
Did God open up Adam and take half of him? Or did he take a rib
Yeah.
to create Eve?
Did he do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Rib or half?
Oh, rib or half?
I've heard convincing arguments for both. I think I lean towards rib, even though I am not a Hebrew scholar
I'm gonna
whatsoever.
be in the middle of this. I'm gonna still say side, but I don't think it was half.
Okay.
Do you like cut off a bit of a fillet?
Yeah, he filleted him a little bit. Not flayed. The fillet. Well, that's worse.
Filet o fish.
Here's the thing.
It doesn't seem
what do you
good.
think, Caleb?
Also, he put him asleep. Do you know?
Yeah.
That kind of weirds me out.
Deep sleep.
Yeah.
Here's my
Anesthetics.
thing. We only translated ribs for those verses. Nowhere else do we.
Right. I don't know why though. There is an argument for it, I thought.
Yeah, I haven't been convinced by them at all.
Right.
I think it's side.
Okay.
But are we missing anything like theologically relevant from a rib thought of in the ancient Near East?
I think
Because I
so.
thought that's the reason why it would say rib. I haven't.
Not
I'm
that
not
I've
a
read.
biblical study.
Not that I've read.
Yeah, I don't study biblical history.
Joel's probably read the most on Genesis 2 and 3.
That's true. But this, other than that historical misconception of basically two humans being fused in some sort of like Siamese union, nothing else has popped out as being interesting to me. I think that side is a better translation because it allows for both interpretations. It can be his rib, and it's just called side, right? Like that's where
Right.
your rib is. So it's not really a contradiction to me if it's side, but if it's side and not your rib, then it might be a misunderstanding of the text.
I think this shows, personally,
Mhm.
the more framework interpretation of Genesis 2 to 3.
Okay.
And how you have humanity represented
Mm.
in Adam, and then the femininity and masculinity are split apart.
Yeah, but I'm not.
Yes.
I'm also not convinced by
Yeah.
framework hypothesis.
Okay.
Not fully.
Well, I mean, like I said, we always talk about Genesis and we get a little bit into it in the
Yeah.
framework stuff. Like
Watch our Genesis episodes.
I could get bogged down in just your mythical, like, kind of mentioning there. Like,
Yeah.
what is a mythical representation? Does it mean it didn't happen? No, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it doesn't mean it did happen. And
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
it's one of these things that is its utility
It's a
in its
function or
existence or in its
Reality. Yeah.
yeah. Is it describing a function or I don't want to say fact because that doesn't make sense
We have
either.
5 episodes on this one topic. Not ribs, but,
We have
Yeah.
5 episodes on ribs.
but Genesis
Where
1,
to cook
1
them,
to 3.
where to buy them, how to eat them.
Yeah.
I'd love an episode where we just say ribs.
Pork or beef?
Pork or beef.
Next question.
Moose.
Oh.
Okay. You ever had moose ribs?
All right,
Pretty
no.
good. Proverbs 2:19.
I'll look it up.
This is we'll read
I'm
the
pretty
the
sure
proverb.
I know which verse.
2:19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll read you the question associated with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know which one this is.
None who go. Oh, okay. Who's he talking about?
Proverb 2:19.
The forbidden woman
Yeah, this
is
when
brought
he's
up
walking
in
down the street.
in 16, and then
Okay.
it's continuing to talk to her at 19. None who go down to her come back, nor do they regain their paths of life. And it's talking about the wayward woman, the seductive women, blah blah blah.
Okay, this one's from Reddit. I feel like that's important. I dated a strange woman, parentheses,
No one on
unbeliever,
Reddit's ever
when I
dated
was
someone.
17. Yeah.
Sorry.
Does that mean I can't find the path to life ever again?
Oh, here's the thing.
We all do things when we're 17.
Let's be fair. This dude's a little concerned.
Yeah.
I think he's genuinely asking this question.
Yeah.
Because I found this on r/ask biblical scholars.
Yes.
Yeah,
He doesn't give us a lot of information, though.
No. But this does
he
get
does
in.
clarify that strange woman in this is unbeliever. A seductress to some degree, but
I'm thinking what's implied is they did things.
Like,
Like-
went down
like
paths.
Like
Went
walk
down
together?
paths. Yeah.
Am I?
I'm gonna keep this PG and say they walked down the street.
Yeah, sure.
they want to hike
Every day
together.
when they're walking down the street. he was dating a strange woman. I think this one's funny. Like I don't think there's a ton of. But here's the advice I would give to this guy.
If a youth came to you and said
If a
this,
youth said, "I have dated a strange woman
I am 17.
when I was 17," which means we know this guy is older than 17.
He's at least 17. Yeah.
And his description of this person, he's never. I get it. Like you get out of a relationship and you're like, that was a strange woman. Like that's fair. I might actually sympathize with this guy a little bit. But what would
It's
you
fair.
define as finding the path to life?
so I think, like all wisdom literature, is not. You shouldn't read. This actually talks a little bit about the Bible reading question. Wisdom literature should not be read as law. Wisdom literature should not be read as gospel.
Mhm.
Wisdom literature should not be read as an epistle. Wisdom literature should be read as, guess what? Wisdom literature.
Hmm.
It's insightful about patterns and behavior and moral reflections on actions and cultures.
Yeah.
Can also be a bit extreme.
To prove a point. And so I think part of it is, hey, when you give yourself over to sinful desires and the wrong people, right? You lose part of yourself.
One of the things I love about wisdom literature, and especially Proverbs, that you can talk about every verse and find more than one meaning behind it.
Yeah.
Because I agree. I also think that when it says finding the path, like it'll draw you away from the paths of life so you will not be able to find again, there's this aspect of there will be a part of you that's left behind.
Yeah. Now, when I say you lose part of yourself, I don't mean that in the purity culture sense.
Yes.
'Cause that's a big thing. What I mean is in confusing caves, and to use the continued metaphor, in confusing alleys of a city, you get lost.
Mm.
And it's very hard to find your path out. And so when you continually go deeper and deeper into those holes, it's harder and harder to find the path of life.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So be careful.
Yeah.
And I think that matches the Proverbs thing. So the dude that's his posture of asking that question,
Yeah.
I would give him a thumbs up and be like, hey, it's going to be okay.
Also, it's a warning. It's not a suggestion. It's a warning on purpose. But it's not, like you said, it's not like an epistle. It's not like the Gospels. It's not definitive doctrine that as soon as you listen to a strange woman, you now are unsaved.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the point.
But it's an observation about what happens when you continually fall into that.
It's a slow fade.
When you
Give yourself away. We're gonna get copyright struck. Like, is it Third Day or Casting Crowns?
Casting Crowns,
It's
I
Casting
think.
Crowns. I was gonna.
That's the part of where they had part of that phase in Christian music when they're like they had children singing the chorus at the end.
Ugh.
Anyway,
They do that in a lot of gospel songs.
it's weird.
I wouldn't call Casting Crowns gospel.
No,
songs.
sorry, yeah, not gospel, worship.
What do we have for time? Okay.
There's some gooders in there.
There's some good ones.
Too bad you won't know them, listener. No,
Too bad I'm not asking them. No, I'm kidding.
You get to guess what the next question is.
Cole
Okay.
can edit this out if he needs to.
If he
Yeah.
needs to, but
But hey, we're not talking.
Right, Cole, we're going to call you bad names now.
It's a break for the listener, right? Also, free advert in the middle while Joel finds the next question. Give us questions. If you want your question to be featured on a turd episode, leave it in a comment in YouTube.
Yep.
That's a fast way to do that.
Yes.
Or email it to us. Although a lot of the email questions that we're getting right now, we're just leaving straight for the 100th episode.
Yeah. But most of those people suggest
Yeah.
for the 100th.
But if you want one in a turd episode, put it in a YouTube comment.
here we go. And this one, I feel like we should just kind of explain the. Okay, you'll see what I mean. Explain the inaccuracies or the fallacies with the argument. Okay. The Gospels of the New Testament, at least according to several reputable scholars, aren't really meant to be taken as historical record. They're stories written at different times that are at odds with each other. From what we know about the historicity of these books, the most accurate source pertaining to them, the Q source, the only one worth using as a historical document, mentions Jesus, but never mentions miracles. There is not conclusive evidence to the existence of the supernatural Jesus that Christians follow.
So true.
So
No, I'm kidding.
Someone
the first
wanna
thing
do
that
it?
there's not conclusive evidence to is the existence of the Q document.
Yeah.
Also, his question kind of assumes that not only does it exist, that we have it.
Yes.
Just go like
Even if it does exist, we don't have it.
Yeah.
And we're not even sure if it does exist.
We've
Yeah.
talked about the Q document before in our Gospels episodes, where we each, all four of us, covered a different gospel, and in 3 of the 4 ones, all of the synoptics, we all disagreed on what the Q document meant and whether or not it predated which book. So
I mean, that's because its construction is created by the similarities between different books.
Yep.
So the largest section that is proposed to be Q is large sections of Matthew and some sections of Mark, because those are shared between grammatically. It seems like the same
And Luke
person wrote them.
definitely steals from both.
So if there is some kind of document recording an event that you are writing another biography about, you would consult this other document. So the idea is like, hey, if you were going to write a biography on George Washington,
Mhm.
and then 5 other people did it, likely they would take the same one of his speeches that you would,
Yeah.
and take that apart.
Now imagine you live in first century world and you don't cite your sources.
Yes.
That's the Q document.
Because it's not an expectation to cite your sources.
Yeah.
Right? And that you were just getting, like, yeah, in George Washington, you're going to see 7 years ago, like, a couple of times.
Yes.
They're from the same
I think
source.
it's Abe Lincoln.
That doesn't mean that they're the same. Is it Abe Lincoln?
Yeah.
I'm not American, so I don't care.
Nice. Get
And
him.
I'm not writing a biography. I used a bad example. I apologize.
No,
But I'm right about the Q stuff.
you are.
Dang it.
Yeah. Here's
Also,
part of
it
the thing
says-
too.
Oh, sorry.
There's no reason to think that the Q source would be most historically accurate. There
Yeah.
are reasons, assuming it exists, there are reasons to think that Luke is more accurate. So even if he's correct
Mm-hmm.
in trying to, even if his method is trying to be like, we should find the most historically accurate gospel, he's not even selecting the right one, even according to his own methodology.
Yep.
And he understands, and the facts that he uses about Q is wrong.
Yep.
But ultimately, what's the fundamental problem with his question?
9 out of 10 dentists recommend.
Oh, that's one aspect for sure.
Yeah.
The other aspect is genre, historical genre, and autobiographies in the ancient world. Are they written to be immaculate historical pieces of historicity?
That's the majority of scholars where they would say no.
Yeah, I would say no as well.
Depends what you mean. I know what you mean.
Exactly. But that's the point, is that you're putting different expectations on a historical biography.
He's walking in saying they don't line up in their events. He mentions that.
Mhm.
They don't line up events in some of their facts.
Well, then you have to look at, is chronology important
Yeah.
to the writers of the gospel?
Does it matter if they got small factoids right? Does it matter if the cloak that Jesus is put on by the Romans, if it's red or scarlet? Or not red or scarlet. Scarlet or purple.
Purple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Does
is
that matter?
different in Luke
And
and Mark, is
I
it?
think
Or
so.
Matthew?
I think
One
it's
of the
Matthew.
two.
Yeah.
Either way, they both say something very different. I think
Mhm.
it's actually John. But
And you
either way.
can make it you can cope and make an argument that it's like, well, maybe it was red, but then after his blood got on it, then it kind of got dark and went purple
Right.
according to the
But
way
they
it looked
both
in the
say
crowd.
it's different colors.
Yeah. But then that's not what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, purple would be pretty rare.
Oh yeah, it would be crazy.
And why would some random soldiers have it? Why would they
Exactly.
put it on some random
Exactly.
prisoner?
Exactly. It's extremely, not just unlikely, it is extremely unlikely.
However, if there's a certain point you're making, it could be true. It's just unlikely.
Mhm.
But if there's a certain point you're making, the regality of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to want to put the purple cloak on him.
Well, and that's the question. In ancient autobiographies, did they fudge some facts to prove points?
Or
We
did
know
they do
this,
it based off of certain different, like, they had different sources that would say different things potentially.
but we know that other autobiographies in the same era fudged facts for points
That's true.
to prove and make an argument. there is no reason to think that
That's
the gospel writers didn't do that as well.
That is true, but then there's many other parts where, like, for example, Luke in Acts would use, like, he would say the distance that it would take from them to get from one
Mhm.
place to another based off shipwrecks and whatever. And not only would be super historically accurate, it's actually accurate within like a mile.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
More accurate than most other people would
And
be
it's
during that
and
time.
it's also worth pointing out that the majority of the times in the New Testament, when a fact would make the argument less credible, that's what's included. They
Yeah.
don't the points where there is either realigning of order events, or if there's a modification in colors of things, which is like, again, that's tiny.
Yeah.
Like if you went to a court case and that was the difference between two testimonies.
Yeah.
And that's the only major difference.
Yeah.
And the
That
other
makes-
ones are also
yeah.
cosmetic, or at least just order of events, but the main story is there. You'd go, oh yeah, sealed and done.
Yeah.
But those places which would make the story less credible are maintained and repeated, such as the women being the first ones to see Christ risen.
Mhm.
That's a big one.
But what about this comment that says that there's no conclusive that it mentions that all of the sources, and the most accurate source, the Q, mentions Jesus but never mentions miracles. We already said we don't know what the Q document really is, but
Yeah.
Also, I'm fairly certain the feeding of the 5,000 is referenced
in all four
It's-
books,
in
Yeah,
all
it is
four books.
The
Yeah.
miracle. Yeah.
But I don't know if that's shared across, if that's some of the same phraseology that's shared across in Matthew and Luke. I'd have to double check that.
pretty similar.
But if the Q document is a construction of shared events and phrasings from across the Gospels,
Yeah.
well, then you're creating it, you're reverse engineering it from the construction of the Gospels.
It is clear what this guy, the Christology that this guy has.
Yes.
Not in any of, doesn't have a Christology really. There's a
Yeah, it's
pattern
not
of thought
Christian.
in religious education, or education on specifically Christian religion, not religious
Mm-hmm.
education, that goes, early Christians did not believe in a supernatural Jesus. Early Christians just believed Jesus as a prophet or religious teacher, a rabbi, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew until he became.
and maybe
God.
if you look at Gnostic stuff,
And you have, well, not even that. Gnostics at least attribute some sort of spirituality.
yeah, that's true. It's just
But
kind of weird.
these types of people will often say, well, in the earliest manuscripts, and that's why like things you can have in Mark where it says, the town didn't believe, so he couldn't do miracles there. That's what the text says, and that's true. That is what the text says.
Mhm.
But they'll go, see, that's the first gospel, and that's
Right.
less deified. That's a lower version of Jesus than what you even see in, let's say, John. Therefore, we can trace the trajectory going back to, well, he was just an ordinary man in the original. And that's what's behind his saying,
like
well,
four
the
leaps
Q
of logic there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's going on when he says in the Q document, there's no miracles, and he wasn't really a big guy. It wasn't really a big deal.
Yeah. His apostles made him a big deal.
It's funny. It's actually human Jesus of the gaps,
Mhm.
but whatever.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, any final thoughts before we close out our episode?
We can keep going.
Do you want to do
One more
another
question.
One more question.
One more question. You got any good
There's
good
no
comments there?
conclusive evidence to the existence of the supernatural Jesus that Christians follow.
The existence, the Christianity itself shows that, I think, how do you take a people that demanded that something physically happened?
Mhm.
And I know Joel and I have had multiple discussions about this. How do you take people that demand something physically happened that would otherwise they have nothing to gain from it, and yet they believe it so much,
Mhm.
right? That they die for it, that they spread, that they go around saying this is good news to the world that has to be known by as many people as we can spread it to.
The area I got this comment from, spoilers, but
The argument is that the apostles themselves show evidence of some sort of massive cataclysmic event.
these people do not accept any part of the Bible as being anywhere near true.
Yeah,
None
well,
of it.
you can prove that
Not a little
Christianity rose outside of the Bible.
Yeah, but you can't believe like the argument that the apostles all believed it and they were whatever comes from within the church or within the Bible.
Yeah,
And that's their argument.
Yeah, even in their framework, you can't trust the early church because
They're the biased
normally
ones. Yeah.
alongside those people, you have people that are like, well, Christian Gnosticism is just as legitimate to a claim of Christian heritage and identity, because you have that. You have books like Versions of Christianity or whatever, right? In the early, and they treat Gnosticism on
like
equal
it's an
footing
actual
with the apostolic faith.
Yeah.
But then they just deny the books of the Bible that talk.
Yeah, and they
against
go,
it.
well, we can't really deduce what's going on, and like,
Mhm.
whatever. Meh.
No
Yeah.
conclusive evidence. What defines as conclusive? Like, what evidence do you want of a supernatural being? You know.
Yeah.
And if it's the Q document, by the way, relegating your historical understanding to one source is not a good idea.
Yeah.
But if it is just believing in just the Q document, the absence of miracles does not disprove miracles.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the, what is it? Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Absence.
Yeah, that's the good old apologetic mantra or whatever it is. But yeah, that's,
Yeah.
This guy's method is not great. And the 9 out of 10 dentist recommend or whatever. That's something I find particularly frustrating.
Well, sorry.
I mean, where he says most scholars believe,
Oh,
like that is just so
most reputable.
most reputable
yeah,
scholars.
yeah.
So what he's doing is he's
he also cites
building this
nothing.
argument. It's like, yeah. So most scholars agree with me, and if they don't fall into the category of reputable.
And even if it is true that most reputable scholars
Mhm.
agree with him, that they're not to be meant as taken as historical record, which we kind of, at least, we kind of agreed with.
Mm-hmm.
He says historical record. We say that they care about historicity as the primary thing.
Yeah.
But even if that's not true, or even if that is true, it doesn't mean like that's an argument for your side.
Yeah, it's an argument from authority, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But an
Doesn't
unknown authority.
Give me their arguments. That's why I care
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, and I mean, we run across that all the time. Even the one about Adam's side is like, hey, most scholars agree that this is the Hebrew term. And it's like, that's fair. Not everyone can be an expert in Hebrew scholarship, and you can't just,
Well,
you can't learn to answer one Facebook question.
in specified fields, you should look towards authorities.
Yes.
Although they are not definitively authoritative.
Yeah.
Their positions have authority, but that is not capital A non-assaultable.
It's not because they said it that makes it true. It's
Yeah.
because they're the ones who studied it, so they know the most about it.
In every branch of study, that is an expected thing. In theology, it's weirdly guarded, which is understandable because it is dangerous to play with heresy.
Also, the role of authority in all matters of church has been massive in interdenominational dialogue.
Like, who has the authority to say what?
Yeah, and what does that authority mean? How much authority does local church tradition have against larger church tradition?
Mhm.
Or historical?
Yeah, what role does historical theology have? What authority is that? How much authority should, let's say you go to a reformational church, how much authority should your reformational documents, your founding reformational documents, how much authority should that have?
Yeah.
Is that on par with the creeds? Is that on par with the church fathers? What about the Pope?
What about your interpretation with the Holy Spirit? Is that authoritative?
Yeah. How about your interpretation of Scripture versus in the same denomination, a scholar?
Yep.
Versus your pastor.
Yeah.
How should, and so it's like, yeah.
Whose
But
interpretation
theology-
is valid?
Yeah, theology gets a little more muddy down, but when it comes to like pretty much every other, even the social sciences like history, history is a social science.
Yeah, history might be a bad one to make an argument for, because I think history is far more like theology in that regard.
Sure,
Because you have fields of
but then you
methodology.
want that is true. But even other ones, even if you argue from authority saying most scholars say this or the reputable scholars say this, yeah, it's an appeal to authority to just say that. But the expectation when you do say that is that if you looked at those people's arguments,
Yeah.
that they would hold up.
Yes.
Which they don't always.
Yeah.
So
And that's just a way of steel. Man, is it steel manning your argument? Is that what that would be called?
If they steel man their own argument?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
quite
usually
because they're
steel
not
man
putting.
other people's.
Sorry, I'm not a great.
It's not quite because they're not actually building anything.
Yeah.
It's like a false wall. Right.
because steel manning's when you argue.
When someone else's
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Like-
Sorry.
But there would be cases like let's say you and I,
Yeah.
Joel and I, are having an argument, and I put forward argument B,
Mhm.
and you put forward argument A, and we are debating it, and then you go, you know what? C.S. Lewis actually totally disagrees with argument B, because I value and respect C.S. Lewis. I see him as somewhat of a authoritative figure
Mhm.
in some way, right? As you would with other scholars. I might go, because that's a shared authority, I
Mhm.
might go, I'll have to check in on that.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It just means that because it's a shared authority, I go, oh, okay, I'll check that out.
Which is how theology goes 90% of the time.
And philosophy.
Yeah.
And history.
A lot of our conversations behind the SRS scene
Yeah.
that no one sees are about things like authority. Where does it come from? Does the historical church matter? Does the modern day interpretations matter? The rapture wasn't really a belief before the 1800s. Does that mean it exists, or can we definitively say it's not true? Stuff like that, based off of like what authority are we basing that off of?
Yeah.
And anyone who
We're not gonna
that
solve that
triggered
issue.
for sure, send us a comment. I will not talk about rapture theology unless asked.
Ask about rapture theology. Please. Please.
I wrote
don't
a paper on it that I now think is bad. So
Interesting.
I think so.
That could be a good question, actually. Not just to bug Joel.
Yeah, fair enough. If someone could catch it away from me, that'd be great. It's a joke about the rapture.
Yep. Be taken away.
Tasteful. Yeah. Catching away is my favorite thing because it means less than the word rapture.
What?
We should end this practice. We should end this episode so that I can start rapture practice. That's where I just do jumping jacks outside.
Oh my goodness. That's
See how high you can jump?
okay. Anyone else got any rapture jokes?
Isn't skydiving just rapture practice?
It's
Try to
reverse
land on the
rapture.
clouds.
Yeah.
Anyway, reverse rapture.
Okay.
It's not
I'm
even
sorry,
funny.
Anyway,
threw
we can
myself
look
for a
forward
loop
to
there.
the second coming of Christ.
Yes, we
It's gonna
can.
be awesome.
It's eternity with Christ is going to be great.
The world put right.
However, it pans out.
Left Behind.
Um,
I love that documentary.
yeah, I love it when Nick Cage is in documentaries.
Yep.
that's always
Mr.
great.
Forehead
Angels.
himself.
Oh, he's not an angel.
Like he's not an Angels and Demons. My goodness, where's this episode going? Okay, secondratesaints.com. That's where you're gonna go to find all of our past and future episodes, and hopefully this episode. If you'd like to support the podcast, check us out at buymeacoffee.com/secondratesaints, or use the link on our website. If you'd like to keep up to date with what Second Rate Saints is doing, we've got an Instagram and we've got a X or a Twitter or whatever you want to call it. So check that out. Any questions, comments, or concerns for the 100th episode? We're getting really close to recording that thing, so get them in quick, okay? Because we need these ready to go for the big 100.
Yeah.
I'm excited for
We're
it.
hitting triple digits.
Hitting triple digits, man. We're getting ready for season 2. No, I'm kidding.
No, we're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that?
No.
Season 2. 6 seasons in a movie. Hey, guys.
What?
I don't know why I'm explaining the plot of Mike Tyson Mysteries right now.
How did I get here?
Like, get here. Turns out the pigeon was the real father of the Chinese girl and not Mike Tyson.
Yeah, because he ordered Chinese food.
Yeah, I think that was the plot. Yeah.